This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Purdy Insurance. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Great to have you with us on the show today. It's brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Well, it is NCAA tournament time, and it's a perfect time to talk about one of the great stories in the history of the NCAA tournament that ended up being one of the great stories in the history of basketball, and that is Larry Bird. We are joined by Keith O'Brien. He wrote the book entitled Heartland that is out right now. And, Keith, first of all, one man's serious plane delay is our benefit. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, glad to be here from a bad airport hotel near the Phoenix airport.
I think I stayed in that hotel. All right, so, look, Bird is a fascinating story because you want to talk about coming from nothing. I mean, he came from nothing, and what was it in his youth and into his early teens that pushed him? Because you're talking about a guy at one point's out there, he's hauling garbage.
Yeah. So having read the book, Heartland is an origin story. This is a narrative that unfolds between 1973 and 1979.
Yep.
Everything else is epilogue. This is not the usual Bird magic story. This is not that at all. What I've done here is really tilted the camera just a little bit to the left, changed the perspective and really zoomed in on this incredible origin story in rural Indiana in the 1970s. And when you do that, you get this completely different story with this entirely new cast of characters. Bird and Magic don't know each other in 1979 when they play in that epic championship game, Indiana State versus Michigan State, 50 million people tuning in. They've met each other one time. They've hardly ever spoken. But there is this cast of characters who does shape and form and save Bird. And he does need saving. I mean, it is bleak in those early years in French Lick, Indiana. French Lick is in Orange County, Indiana. In the 1970s, Orange County was the second poorest county in the state at a time when Indiana was one of our poorest states. Yeah. Bird's family struggles financially. His father struggles to hold down a job, struggles with drinking. All of this is in Bird's background. All of this he is trying to overcome. And, for these reasons, Bird's not dreaming in 1972 or 73 of one day playing college basketball. He's not dreaming of playing in the NBA. Those are dreams far too absurd for a boy to have in French Lick, Indiana in 1973. All Bird wants to do is just maybe one day be as good as his older brother Mark, who had played on the varsity team at Springs Valley High School in French Lick. That is what Larry Bird is dreaming of doing.
His father is an interesting individual, ends up taking his own life in all of this. What were there any positives that Larry Bird drew from his father, and what were the negatives that he drew from his father that maybe spurred him? Well,
I mean, you can't. Let's start with the negatives first because it's enormous. I mean, in 2026, if a loved one takes his or her own life, I mean, that we have a word for that. That's a trauma.
Yes,
it's a trauma in a family. That's a trauma for a community. It's horrific. No one speaks like that in rural Indiana in the 1970s. At the moment where Larry Bird's father takes his own life. Larry is 18 years old. He's just turned 18. And it happened in the darkest moment of his life.
That's
he
right.
has
He's left
graduated
Indiana.
from high school. Yeah, he's graduated from high school. He's gone to Indiana University and briefly had a scholarship to play for Bobby Knight. Last on campus for 3 weeks. There's fresh reporting in the book Heartland about that time. Now he's returned to French Lick. He's briefly enrolled in vocational school, briefly played for a basketball team there, then quit that team, quit that school, then gotten that job, at the city where, among other things, he collects the trash. It's in that window, that Larry's father takes his own life. And in March, April 1975, and the weeks after that trauma, Bird is telling his mother that he is not going back to college. He's done. And one thing I've learned about Larry Bird is when he says something, he means it.
Oh, yeah.
And, so he has really slipped all the way to the edge of the basketball map. So all of this is wrapped up in that tragedy. But, Larry's father, was, despite his troubles, was present in the lives of his children. Larry will recall later that his father really pushed Larry to compete against his older brothers. Larry had 2 older brothers, Mike and Mark. Larry's father pushes him to challenge them as best he can. Even in that dark window of time, where Larry's father is struggling, he would sometimes, walk to games, that Larry was playing at Springs Valley High School because he did not have a car. So, it is, just another adversity that, Larry has to overcome in these early years.
What's interesting is that, eventually in part of he gets to Indiana State. When Bird was named the National Player of the Year, they also had to vote for Coach of the Year. And there were a bunch of people on their ballots, by the way, just so you know, this is a little aside story here, that didn't put down the name of the coach. They put down Larry Bird's coach. Well, that guy's name is Bill Hodges. Okay, so what is it about Bill Hodges that finally convinces Larry Bird, okay, I'm going to give it a shot? How persistent did he have to be to do it?
Were it not for Bill Hodges, I do believe we may never know the name Larry Bird. He may have never gone back to college. He may have stayed in French Lick. He may have slipped away forever. Bill Hodges is a down-on-his-luck assistant coach at Indiana State in the spring of '75. He is on his 3rd job in 3 years. He has moved from Tennessee Tech to Armstrong State to Indiana State. Not moving in the right direction by any means. And, Bill is an Indiana guy, born and raised in Union Township, a rural community outside of Indianapolis. He knows what it's like to grow up poor. He knows what it's like to bale hay or live in a house without indoor plumbing. He knows what it's like to feel overlooked. He also knows every nook and cranny of the state, every little bandbox gym. And, in April of '75, after getting that job at Indiana State, Bill Hodges goes down to French Lick looking for Larry Bird. This is a moment where, people have sort of stopped looking for Larry Bird. I scoured the newspapers in Indiana in '75. No one is writing stories about Larry Bird or where will he sign or what will he do. No one cares, to be totally honest with you. And, Hodges, in a moment that would never happen today in 2026, has to drive the streets, literally drive the streets of French Lick looking for, as he said, a 6'7" blonde kid. He finds him outside a laundromat on State Road 56. And, what ultimately happens that day and in the weeks to come is that, Bill Hodges forms a connection with Larry. He gets Larry. He understands Larry. Larry feels that. That's why Larry decides to enroll at Indiana State in the summer of '75. And, once he gets there to Terre Haute, Bill Hodges then does things for Larry that Bobby Knight never did. Bill Hodges recruits a fellow player from French Lick, a friend of Larry's, just to make Larry feel comfortable. He allows Larry to live in his basement for a time before school starts, charging him rent to cover their NCAA bases. He helps get Larry a job, introducing him to the richest man in Terre Haute, a man who will become like a father figure to Larry. For all these reasons, it works at Indiana State. Larry feels comfortable. He decides to stay, setting the stage, for what's to come.
And also during this, what's interesting about this time is that now he has success at Indiana State. I'm not to the Final Four season yet, but this is part of this. The Celtics and Red Auerbach always knew every rule. You and I both know that. Red Auerbach knew every rule. He makes Bird, I think it was the 5th overall pick in the draft, if I'm right.
Yeah, number 6.
Yeah, 6. Number 6 in the draft. He had Freeman Williams was the other guy. And he does this with the idea that Bird's going to stay in school. It's a future pick. What was that like for Larry, knowing that he can go to the Celtics, he stays for what is his senior season, and then it becomes a difficult because you've got a certain time frame in the NBA before you can sign. And if they don't sign him, he goes back into the draft. What was all that like?
Well, for 2 years while he's at Indiana State, the first 2 years, no one does care about Larry. He's in the hinterlands of the sport, playing in a small school teetering on the edge of oblivion. No one sees his game. But you're right. By 77, 78, that changes. Red Auerbach does draft him in June 78. Larry Bird is now an All-American, averaging 30 points a game. Auerbach, is incredibly shrewd. And in those days, an NBA team could retain the rights to a player as long as they sign them within the year, 12 months to sign them. Bird, opts to come back to Terre Haute to play his senior year for no money, something else that wouldn't happen today in 2026. These players would be gone. That miracle that is about to unfold would have never happened. Auerbach says something really smart. Honestly, I think this is a lesson for life. I'm going to think about this line anytime I make decisions going forward. People are criticizing Auerbach for having taken Bird, a player that most people have never seen, who's not going to come for a year and may not sign at all. And Auerbach says, and I'm paraphrasing, a year goes by faster than people think. And 1 year from now, folks are going to kick themselves for having not taken a chance on Larry Bird. And, Auerbach's right about that because it's that last season where Larry really explodes onto the national scene. It doesn't happen in his first year at Indiana State. It doesn't happen in his second year. It happens in that last year. And, that's when this incredible miracle unfolds. Indiana State steamrolling to the championship game in March 1979, undefeated at 33-0 and capturing the imagination of America.
Yeah, Larry Bird ends up later on when he's playing for the Celtics. He hurts his back, and in part because he was putting in a concrete driveway for his mother. Well, Larry Bird's trying to put the concrete driveway in for himself. He's got enough money to hire somebody, but that's Larry Bird. What does his mom, what has she meant to him, especially in this time? And the driveway story, which I just told, what does it tell you about Larry Bird and money?
Well, Larry Bird is comes from this he does not forget that. He's I mean, I interviewed folks who knew Bird near the tail end of his time with the Pacers. You know, when he's president of the Pacers, whining and dining, politicians, Hall of Famers, et cetera, who come to games. You know, Larry would sometimes end the night in his box with a half full, very expensive bottle of wine. You know, he'd recork that thing and they'd drink it again the next night. I mean, that's how frugal Larry Bird is. And so yes, he's going to help pave his mother's driveway, in the late 80s, which will lead to some back problems that will maybe ultimately, lead to the end of his career. But his mother is his rock. She is there in Terre Haute through these years. The Bird brothers moved to Terre Haute. It becomes a second home for the Birds. Georgia Bird is at all of these games during that miracle season. And while Larry is, becoming a back-to-back All-American and the AP Player of the Year and, signing that contract with the Boston Celtics, Georgia Bird is being heralded as the Hoosier Mother of the Year, an actual title that the state legislature bestowed on her.
Larry, in growing up, the Indiana Pacers are in existence, and they're in the ABA, won 3 ABA titles, and one of the key guys in that happened to be Mel Daniels. Mel Daniels also is an assistant coach for Bill Hodges on this Indiana State team. Mel Daniels help him in any way, especially considering that Larry at least felt the fan connection to the Pacers?
Well, Mel Daniels helps him in a couple different ways. Mel Daniels was the beast of a man, former ABA champion with the Pacers, ABA MVP. Mel Daniels' number hangs in the rafters today.
Yes, it
at
does.
the Pacers arena.
Yes, it does.
He's a massive star. And, Mel, in his playing career, opened a gash in a man's jaw that required 30 stitches with his elbow. And after practices in that miracle season 78-79, where Larry Bird explodes onto the scene and Indiana State captures the hearts of America, Mel Daniels will play Bird one-on-one, against each other up and down the court. This was like must-watch TV for Larry's teammates. They would sit in the stands, watch this happen. And, Mel Daniels did not, give Larry Bird any quarter, and would challenge him physically, challenge him verbally, really, in a lot of ways, it was those one-on-one games between Larry Bird and Mel Daniels that Bird started to hone this trash talking that he would come to be known for later.
The trash talking thing is famous. Famous. He would say to Isaiah Thomas, he says, "Who's guarding me tonight?" And he'd list like 3 guys. He goes, "Yeah, but which one of them is going to guard me?" it's like, come on. One quick thing, and that's about his brother Mark. A lot of people don't realize that one of the reasons Larry wore 33 is that was his brother's number. And what does that tell you about the influence his brother Mark had on him?
Well, Larry wouldn't speak to me for this book, but I've met Mark on a couple of occasions. Mark still there today. And, he was a couple of years older than Larry. And in the 60s and 70s, Mark Bird was considered the best player in the family.
Yep.
He was considered shooter that folks in Orange County had ever seen from 15 foot and in. Mark is an important figure in Larry's life. And as I said a few minutes ago, it is Mark who Larry wants to be. He's not trying to be Bill Walton. He's not trying to be Julius Erving. He's not trying to make the NBA or go to some big-time college. Larry Bird just wants to play at Springs Valley High School like his older brother Mark did.
Keith, it's marvelous. Larry Bird is a fascinating topic, and you've delved into areas in his life that people really have either, if they've explored it, it's been superficially. You went in deep with it, and it was outstanding. And the book is entitled Heartland, okay? Heartland is the name of it. You want to learn about the background of one of the true greats in the history of the game? That's it. Thank you so much for the time you gave us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Keith O'Brien. We'll come back more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Sunbury Motors.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. We have so many different insurance needs. And we need somebody to organize all of them and make sure they do everything they can to save you money. Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. We now bring in a man who has Old Dominion going to the Final Four, and they're not even in the tournament.
Oh, I read the wrong report.
And an average day in the world of broadcasting begins.
I hate when that happens.
How are you, sir?
I'm well. How about yourself?
Doing great. Doing great.
I feel good with my Final Four right now. Not great, but good.
And exactly who is your Final Four?
I have Duke UConn and Arizona Gonzaga. I'm kind of going blue blood-esque here.
Well, let me explain something that's a little where the game has changed because of the current rules. What made a big difference in recent years to me in the NCAA basketball tournament is that you would see some of these mid-major to low-major teams be able to pull an upset or two along the way to get themselves a lot of notoriety. What did they have in common? What they had in common was they were obviously good teams. They were winning teams. You know, some of these teams that have won conference tournaments to get to the championship, some of them, especially if they're a one seed, haven't lost since maybe mid-January. So they have great confidence. But now let's get to the key part. Most of them were older, been together a while, built to that point. In the transfer portal era, what has changed among the Power Five schools? Because of the portal era, many have become older teams. Duke aside, but many have become older teams. So the older advantage, and where are they getting some of these players from to become older? They're taking many of them from the mid-major,
the mid-majors, right,
and the low-major ones. And that's where, you know, that's an advantage that some of these mid-major, low-major teams have had and have now lost. And that's why I think last year, for example, you had 4 1s make it. I'm not saying 4 1s are making it, but I think there were fewer upsets last year. And I think we're on track for fewer upsets this year because of the age element that the mid-major, low majors used to have as their advantage and no longer have as their advantage.
But by the way, I gave you my top half of the Elite Eight. Sorry. I'm looking at, as I'm saying that, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not the right bracket I picked. I have Duke, Houston, and Arizona, Iowa State.
Every day I get on my knees.
I just glanced at it wrong.
Every day I get on my knees and I say the same thing every day. Give me one guy, just one guy.
Nope.
I get no guy.
Denied. No, I looked at the top. I thought I was looking at the whole bracket, and as I'm saying Duke, UConn, I'm like, wait a minute, how do I have Duke, UConn in the Final Four? They're in the same. They're in the same part of the bracket.
I just wanted one guy. All right, and the answer keeps coming back. No, you're on your own.
I didn't see as. I mean, I think there'll be a few upsets early on.
There'll be a couple, but they're not.
But I don't think there's anything that's going to go on. I don't think there's going to be a Cinderella per se.
I mean, are there among the major teams some teams that are vulnerable and very much up and down? Like, let's just pick one. Kentucky. Kentucky is very much up and down. I don't think Mark Pope really knows from game to game what he's going to get. But I figure I'd at least make that point on their behalf. But and you also have a team, for example, in Nebraska, which is I think Nebraska's a 4. I think
they are a 4.
They've got Troy in the first round, and the issue for them is that they've never won an NCAA tournament game.
And I don't have them winning this time either. That's my upset special.
I think,
because I think Troy could score some points.
They can, except Nebraska's pretty good defensively.
That's the challenge, is will a good defense stop a good offense? And will that be enough?
They also have a little different makeup now. Now that they can look at Sam Hoiberg and he can run the show. They brought in Price Sanford, which gives them a legitimate three-point threats, and then they go inside with Rick Mast. Getting Mast back was really important to what they're doing, and that's one of the reasons why they actually have one of the lower budgeted teams in the Big Ten, because they didn't have to pay any money for Sam Hoiberg. Their starting point guard, no money. And Rick Mast was out all last year, so he had no bargaining power. So, he just wanted to come back and play, so not a lot of money. 40% of the starting lineup didn't cost him much. But I think they break it this time. I think they beat Troy.
I also like South Florida over Louisville. Both those teams can score an awful lot of points. They don't play a whole lot of defense statistically. Yeah. So that game could be in the 90s.
Actually, South Florida is very good.
I mean, they're averaging 88 points a game.
Yeah, South Florida is very good. And I would have told you that a month ago, too, that they're very good. But, I mean, I may be wrong about this, but I just have a feeling that there will be some lower-seeded teams being higher-seeded teams, which everybody will go, hey, it's an upset. It's March.
And 8-9's an upset.
Yeah, it's
not.
It's not going to be that way. But I think for the most part, I would not doubt in my mind that 12 of the top 16 seeds get through to the second weekend. I just think the age thing is something where the age thing is something where, because of the portal, the major schools have taken away that advantage from the mid-major, low-major schools. I just think that's happened. There'll be a lot of talk about Acuff, Darren Peterson, A.J. Debanza, Cameron Boozer. There'll be the youth, the one-and-dones that will be in the draft. There'll be a lot of talk about all of those guys. But it's going to be the older players that will play a huge role in what happens. Now, just because you're older does not mean you're automatically going to play great for 6 straight games. Purdue is a prime example. Purdue just won the Big Ten tournament, winning 4 games in 4 days. What a terrific, terrific run. But if you look at Purdue's season in terms of what it was expected, with a starting backcourt of Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer back, Trey Kaufman-Renn back, adding in Oscar Clough from South Dakota State. Whoa. I mean, this is quite the team. Nope, lost 5 games at Mackey this year. They didn't just lose 5 games. They lost 5 games at Mackey Arena. Really? Sometimes teams struggle. And stuff like that happens. Now, then you have some other teams, like let's take Iowa. Iowa's in an 8-9 game with, I know Ohio State plays TCU. Clemson, right? That's the Iowa game, right? Clemson?
I have to look that one. I can't remember. Yeah, Clemson, Iowa. That's the 8-9 in the South. Yes.
I only asked for one guy. That's all I asked for.
Well, I was looking something up, and I was going to comment on it, so I was looking at that at the particular moment.
Like in 365 days, you can't give me a guy?
Clemson, Iowa, 8-9 in the South.
Okay, so here's the issue with Iowa. They have a legitimately great player on the college level that I think is a first-round NBA pick. Now, he's not a lottery pick, but I think he is a first-day, first-round pick in the NBA. It's the guard Bennett Sturts. 40 minutes a game, plays great defense, shoots really well, right? But here's the problem, Kevin. And I said this going into the game, and nothing about seeing them in person changed my mind about it. He's a great player surrounded by just other guys.
Everybody else.
Right. Now, all these guys together have been to the NCAA tournament. They were with Drake. 6 of those Drake players came over. So, in other words, they were there last year. But, yeah, that's an 8-9 game. That can go either way. I think Clemson's definitely the favorite in that game in watching them play this year.
Let me take you out west, because I know you've seen one of these teams, and there's a matchup that really, really intrigues me, and that's Wisconsin-High Point. Now, I know High Point hasn't played a really tough schedule. I get that. But, man, can they score. Man, can they score.
High Point can score, but remember, this is also the highest-scoring Wisconsin team since 1971.
83 a game.
Right? Greg Gard has completely changed the image of football on wood to high-flying offense. It starts with their backcourt. And remember, what didn't Wisconsin have in the Big Ten tournament that they will have in the NCAA tournament? That's their center, Nolan Winter.
That's what I was just going to ask you about, his status. Because the last time I checked, he was still game time.
Well, it's not game day yet, so he's there you go.
Well, if he's out, I think that really opens the door for High Point.
Well, it opens the door for them. But I also think that when you have not just one, but 2 guards like that can score. Now, they are confident he's going to come back this week. Just like now, who knows how much of this stuff is put out there? Okay? And the problem is, Like they'll put it out there because they're trying to protect their seed. Just like I'm pretty confident that it sounds like that Bilodeau and Donovan Dent are coming back for UCLA. But Winter did do the pregame warm-up but didn't play. But this is okay. But let me tell you something about Boyd for a second. Boyd's a transfer. He's a sixth-year guy. He has 38. 38 in the quarterfinal. And I think Blackwell had 30 or something. Blackwell I've always liked. I mean, since he was a freshman, like, oh, geez, Blackwell can play. So Boyd has 38. They play Michigan. What does Michigan do when it comes time to match up? This is one of the biggest reasons why I voted Yaxel Lendeborg as Big Ten Player of the Year. All the offense is there. You know, the shooting, you throw in the shooting, the rebounding, the offense is all there. But Lendeborg can guard 1 through 5. I'm having trouble with my center. I can put him on him. He's 6'8", and he's got length. I can put him on a guard. He's got the footwork to handle it. So they put him on Boyd. Now, Boyd had 38 in the quarterfinal. 6 for 20 from the field in the semifinal. Here's the other point, too. And you have to remember this. When you go through conference play, everybody knows everybody. There are going to be spots that are open on the floor that have not been open in 2.5 months. And High Point, Wisconsin can be a high-scoring game, but I think Wisconsin wins the game by 8-10.
I took a flyer on that one because 90 points a game?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I understand the competition level isn't what Wisconsin was seeing, but still, that's a lot of baskets.
Well, no, it is. It absolutely is. But Wisconsin still plays good defense. Not great defense, but good defense. Right? And I think that the backcourt combination, and I really believe Winter's going to be back. I really do. I think that makes a big difference in a game like this. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. I don't even know what day it is, but I think it's going to be a fun game to watch.
I think Florida, now I could be off base on this one, and I'm willing to concede that, but I think Florida really has the best route right now of all the number ones.
Yeah, no, they've got actually Duke has the toughest route.
Oh, I think so too, but I think Florida has the best route to get there.
What the craziest thing is, you're the number 1 seed, you got the toughest route? It's like, really? Okay. There you go.
Ohio State or TCU coming out of that is going to be a rough matchup in that second round.
Well, yeah, because look, and I think it's going to be Ohio State. Let me tell you what I do like about Ohio State. What's tough about Ohio State? What's tough about Ohio State is this: I like their center Christoph Tilley, except he is playing hurt. I can see it. I'm watching him. You can see this kid, to his credit, is gutting it out on the floor because they know they need him. I give him all the credit in the world. So that's the tough part. Now let me tell you the part that's like, because their depth at center, Ngovan's all right. They've been using Puff Johnson as their third center. Not the best option in the world. But this is where Ohio State has something. I'm talking about the first round now.
The TCU game.
Bruce Thornton. You know what I think of him. I have watched this kid play for 4 years now. He is just a terrific college basketball player. Bynum is the one that has all the NBA potential. Mobley has just one of the great shots I've seen in maybe 3 decades in the Big Ten. But Thornton, there's your engine. And I just can't imagine with Thornton on the floor that Ohio State loses that first game. Now, the next game, okay, becomes a little more problematic. But injuries also play a role in this thing. Foster's out, right? And he's not the only Duke injury. So you've got a problem there. We talked about Nolan Winter. What about Bilodeau and Dent with UCLA? It looks like they're going to be able to play in the opening round. And there are other guys that are banged up right now. Oh, can I make one quick note about Northern Iowa? Did you watch the selection yesterday? Or
I did.
Okay. You see when Northern Iowa came up, and the Panthers of Northern Iowa, and they're sitting there.
You talk about delay.
Well, you want to know why?
I'm guessing they were watching on the internet?
No, they're getting a feed from CBS, a direct feed, so which allows them to get it ahead of, I didn't realize that. 5 to 10 seconds ahead. Okay, we refer to it when we're doing football. We refer to it as the truck feed.
Right.
Okay. Right. Because you're seeing a delayed 7 to 10 seconds on TV. Well, they're sitting there, and CBS hit the wrong button, and they're showing the Northern Iowa people are seeing Hofstra on their screen.
Oh.
Right? So they're sitting there, and there's no sound, and they don't know they're talking about Hofstra. They're going, so they're just sitting there waiting for their name to be called because they haven't heard their name called. Because a guy in CBS hit the wrong button.
See, I thought maybe they were watching, a streaming style feed, which is delayed 30 seconds to 45 seconds, even a minute. And that's why they were just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then they finally bailed on it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be faster. Someone at the network punched up something wrong. All they saw was a feed of Hofstra celebrating when their selection came up.
Well, I can relate to whoever hit the wrong button.
I've asked you over just, do I have to keep asking one guy?
I can understand hitting the wrong button.
Okay. So all they have on their screen is the audio of Hofstra. That's what they have. So they never heard their name called. That's why Northern Iowa was sitting there like, what's wrong with these people? There's nothing wrong with these people.
So looking around like, did you see anything? No, I didn't see anything yet. Crazy. How about now? Did we get picked now? No? Okay.
No, I mean, they're just sitting there waiting.
I know.
Now, they already know they're in the... Now, remember, they already know they're in the tournament. They won the Missouri Valley. Okay, they already won, they're already in. So, in other words, they're the tournament champions, so they already knew they were going in.
It's just where they were going.
Right. It's just the fact that they're getting their name called, and you go from there.
Well, next half hour, you're going to have to explain to me how, Buffalo is in the Midwest or South? Or I mean, they're playing games in Buffalo that's not even in the East region.
Yeah, well, these are called pods.
I get it, but don't call it Midwest and South if you're not playing any of them there.
Yeah, but that's the region you're in.
I know, but it just doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I'll make sense of it.
Can we please just make sense? I mean, really. If you're in the West, you should be playing in the West. It's not a difficult thing. Even I know geography. Here's the West bracket. We're going to be playing that one in Maine. What? I mean, it's West for somebody, I'm sure, but I don't know who.
I grow fatigued. All right, I'll explain the pod system next. Can't wait.
I'm excited about this next hour.